Before we get started, I do want to reach out to all of you guys listening and ask a small favor. And that's if you guys could go online and rate and review this podcast. Your input is far more important than you could probably imagine. Much like Instagram, podcasts have algorithms, and your reviews are a major contributor to helping these things grow. So if you don't mind, take 2 minutes and just rate and review the show. I would greatly appreciate it. Now let's get to the show. Chris Considine has had quite the automotive journey. He raced go-karts as a kid while working his way up to the open-wheel levels of the junior formulas, but that's not all. He's worked as a reporter at Blamo alongside his automotive journalist father, but it was while working in Phoenix, Arizona as a tire technician where Chris built his first racing simulator. That first DIY project was the basis for which CXC Simulators was born and is now responsible for producing industry-leading simulations for professional drivers and high-net-worth individuals worldwide. I thoroughly enjoyed this conversation with Chris as he exemplifies what it means to grow a small business by way of managing expectations, knowing where the holes are, and hiring accordingly, all while creating an amazing product. These are the simple lessons that are far easier said than done, so it really is wonderful to see. CXC produces an unbelievable piece of kit. The engineering, the mechanics, and even the levels of their customer service are incredible. Do yourself a favor and visit the website linked in the show notes to see for yourself. Chris and I talk real-life cars, and he shares why he chose a Golf R as his daily driver, so definitely stick around for that. I'm your host, Wesley Smith, and you're listening to the Standard Age Podcast. Well, Chris, thanks so much for taking the time to be on the podcast. Really appreciate you having me up here in Hawthorne, I guess we are, technically.
Lovely Hawthorne, California.
Right across from SpaceX.
Yep.
And Tesla Design Center, you said?
Yeah, it seems to be Aerospace Park up here.
So as far as design, function, technology, you're in pretty decent company.
We are, yeah, kind of accidentally.
Yeah. Were you here before them?
No, actually, we came in after some of it, but they've expanded so much in this area.
Yeah.
They've started taking over buildings all around us, basically, and other companies like them have moved in since we've moved in as well.
Anybody of note?
We have Arch Motorcycles right next to us.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Then we have Ring right down the street as well.
Sure.
And that's their main campus now.
Wow.
So there's a lot of technology really moving into this area. This area used to be very old school kind of aerospace, Northrop Grumman and so on and so forth. And all these buildings were built for World War II kind of manufacturing of aircraft.
I see.
And now all these buildings are here. And, obviously that industry has kind of changed quite a bit.
Right.
So you have all these new, kind of technology, either aerospace or automotive, bespoke automotive or, motorcycles, so on and so forth, that are kind of filling in these buildings around here. So
Yeah, cool. So is this an old airplane hangar that we're in?
This is indeed. This was a Northrop Grumman tooling building, actually.
Yeah, I see kind of the rounded roof.
Yeah.
Which is so typical of a hangar.
We're always kind of worried because they're constantly testing the ground around here, underneath this building. They drill these big wells because back then they didn't really care about what they dumped in the ground. So
I see.
Depending on which building you're in, you start to worry about what's underneath the concrete, but we're safe.
Right. Okay, cool. Well, let's start at the beginning. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Los Angeles. I was born and raised in Los Angeles. I grew up off of a road called Beverly Glen.
Yeah.
Right near Mulholland. So
Okay, cool. So up in the hills.
Up in the hills.
Sweet.
Yeah.
What did mom and dad do?
My mother was an executive for MGM.
Oh, cool.
And my father was a motorsports journalist and racer.
No kidding.
Yeah.
For which outlets?
All of them.
Okay.
It seems like. He moved around a lot. He worked for Auto Week, Motor Trend, Car and Driver. Wrote a few books. Is writing another book right now.
What's the subject?
The book right now is all the American drivers that have ever raced at Le Mans.
Oh, very cool.
So it's huge.
Yeah.
And in multi-volume, I think he's on his 5th volume right now.
So it's mostly storytelling or mostly pictures, or
It's both, actually.
kind of coffee table style?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. It's storytelling in the sense that he loves to capture kind of the background stuff that no one's ever heard about or knew about.
Sure.
But he also has access to just amazing photography. So
Yeah, I would imagine.
you get to see some really cool stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, he's turned into kind of an automotive historian now in his later years.
Nice. Well, what's your dad's name so people can look it up?
My dad's name is Tim Considine, and the book he's already released 3 volumes. The book is called Yanks at Le Mans, and the next 2 volumes should be out soon.
Well, let's talk about Mom, an executive at MGM.
Yeah.
As a woman as well.
Yeah.
I mean,
in the 80s.
That's got to be rare. So tell me about your mom.
So my mother grew up in the film industry. Her mother came from the film industry, and actually my dad did as well.
All on the business side?
All on the business side, yeah. My mother. So she's gosh, I don't even remember what she started at the very, very bottom, right?
So like production assistant or something.
Yeah. I think projection, I think she worked in, because that's what her mother did. And then she worked her way up to executive vice president at MGM.
No kidding.
And she worked on some pretty big films. It was all when I was really young, so I don't really remember most of it.
Right.
I just remember that she was not there a lot, and when she was there, she was there. So that kind of ended. She kind of retired in the early 90s, and she kind of burnt out on it. I think she was like, I'm done with that pace of life. I'm just gonna go do something else.
So who was the disciplinarian between the two?
My dad.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah,
I would have maybe thought otherwise.
Yeah, I would have too, but I think that she was so good at like, this is my work life, this is my home life.
That's really great.
She was really, really good at that.
Awesome.
And my dad was kind of the one who's like, this is how it is.
Right.
But he too came from that business as well.
Okay.
He was an actor in the 50s and 60s. And his whole family is all movie business back to the teens.
No kidding. Mm-hmm. So you guys have a long lineage of Los Angeles then.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'm 3rd generation.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's great. So where did you go to school then?
I went to school around that area for my early years. And I went to school. I kind of hopped around a lot for schools. I went to school in the Valley for middle school, and then we moved to Beverly Hills, and I went to middle school in Beverly Hills, and then I went later to high school in Beverly Hills.
Okay.
For 2 years, and then we moved to an area called Mar Vista. So I went to Venice High for the last 2 years, so it's a bit of a culture shock there.
Yeah, for sure.
I never really fit in at Beverly, honestly. It wasn't really my thing. I mean, all the kids there were into different things and kind of had different backgrounds. And while we lived in Beverly Hills, we never really kind of fit in.
Why do you think that was?
Because I think my parents really enjoyed living in the Beverly Glen area because it was much more kind of relaxed, very easygoing, not self-absorbed at all. And everybody was kind of into their own thing that was kind of unique and interesting and exciting, whereas in Beverly Hills, it was not that.
So did your dad race at all, or was he just specifically... Okay, so...
Yeah, he started racing in the late 50s. Karts, actually, first.
Really?
Before karts were, like, really established.
Sure.
And then sports cars. And kind of never stopped until, and some of my earliest memories are watching my dad racing at Ascot, at a dirt track out here.
Nice.
So yeah, I was exposed to racing very early on.
Now, did you partake in that as well?
I did. Yeah. It was interesting. I was exposed to it and I was always around it, but my dad never pushed it. And almost kind of went, if you want to do this, then you do it on your own, like kind of, he never opened doors overtly or made things happen or even paid for it. You know, it
Really?
was like, if you want to do this, you do it on your own, which in hindsight was probably a great thing, you know.
So were you finding like your own sponsors and stuff like that?
Yeah. Well, in the early days, there were no sponsors. You know, at that young age, it's just, you know, find money wherever you can.
Right.
You know,
Couch cushions and things.
yeah, exactly. And, you know, I mean, even before I was like proper racing, I was, you know, someone gave me a kart chassis, but it was an old kart chassis and not really worth anything. And then I had to like completely take it apart myself and build it back together again and find a motor and find a body and find, you know, like all the things I had to do by myself. Even before I had a kart chassis, we lived on a street, and I used to build. First, I'd sit on my skateboard and ride down the whole hill.
I was going to say like soapbox derby type stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And then a friend of his was a luge boarder and had these complete, you know, super complex luge boards, and I would go watch him. And I'd go home and take apart my skateboard and build one out of, 2x4s and go ripping down the street at just insane speeds, wearing my dad's old helmet, you know, and my mom's hockey pads. You know?
Wait, your mom played hockey?
Yeah, my mom played hockey. Yeah.
The only famous female hockey player I'm aware of is Linda Cohn from ESPN.
Well, she just played it casually, like with pickup games. You know?
That's insane. That's awesome.
Yeah.
What, did your mom grow up playing hockey?
No.
She picked it up in Los Angeles?
Yeah.
You said you're third generation. So.
I know. Well, we've always been into sports, right? My dad was a soccer player. He was Pelé's photographer for some time.
Holy smokes.
My mom and dad played soccer just in a weekly game that I remember from being a baby, in fact. You know, they would just go play. Yeah. So sports was always a thing as a for fun thing.
Right. As an outlet.
Yeah, as an outlet. So yeah, my mom, I guess, just played hockey.
So what did you gravitate toward other than luge, obviously?
I played soccer.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, that was the one thing that my dad was really, really actively participating in sports-wise. He was always my coach of the team until club levels and school playing. But, you know, I always played with him, and he was my teacher there. And he was in racing as well. It just wasn't... I think he treated motorsports and racing like he treated the movie business. It's something to do for fun, but be careful because it's, you know, only a few make it, and it's it can be an ugly business. You know?
I see. So he's kind of doing it almost to protect you.
Yeah.
As opposed to let's see how much drive you have to do it for yourself.
Well, and he did. He's like, you know, look, whatever drive you have, I will help a little bit, but I'm not going to be the pushing force on this.
Interesting.
Yeah.
You know, there's two things there. I think one is also the element of cost, right? Because the movie business is expensive.
Yeah.
Racing is expensive.
Yeah.
Soccer's cheap.
Yeah.
You know, and then, but also the other thing I was going to say is that dichotomy, right? Of like totally individual sport versus a team sport.
Yes. That's actually true. Very true. Yeah. You know, yes. And when he taught soccer, it was team, right? And even when he taught, you know, the lessons in racing for me, it was, he really played up the team part of it. He's like, you might be the driver, but think of all the people who are right there with you. They might not be in the cockpit, but they're right there with you, getting the car ready. They're bleeding for you, you know, and they're not bleeding for you. They're bleeding for the team. This is all a team, you know?
Well, let's talk a little bit about CXC.
Yeah.
Now, are those your initials?
They are my initials.
Okay. All right. I figured as much, or it was like C by C. I wasn't really sure, but that's cool. What's your middle name?
My middle name is Xian. It's Chinese.
Yeah. Now, okay. So how did your parents go with the Chinese middle name?
So my dad, I think, suffers from the same thing that I do, where he gets bored easily, right, and wants to move on to the next thing. or did then. And at the time, he was doing documentaries in China. After he stopped acting, and he put aside the motorsport stuff for a brief period and said, I want to do some documentary films in China. And he just got super absorbed into that. And he was traveling to China a lot. He took us to China a lot, and just decided to give me a Chinese middle name. Taught me how to speak Chinese at the time. I've since
Mandarin?
forgotten all of it. Mandarin, yes.
Yeah. Cool. That's awesome.
One of the big turning points in my life was my dad kind of introduced me to the right people at Le Mans, and I went to go work at Le Mans, but as a pit reporter.
No kidding.
And it was kind of interesting being a junior open wheel driver, but being at Le Mans and not a driver.
Right.
That was interesting to do. But being in the mix with a lot of the drivers I knew and was racing karts with, and a while back. And kind of seeing what the big show is all about, and having the inside. Being a pit reporter, you can go anywhere you want, and kind of seeing how it worked. And yeah, it was the big time.
Right.
And after the first year, I came back and kind of renewed my, okay, if this is what I want to do, I've got to put my head down, and I've really got to take this very, very seriously.
Sure.
And I knew Bob Bondurant through my father.
Okay.
And I literally wrote an email to Bob Bondurant and said, can I come work for your school? And, in my head, I'm thinking, I'm going to be an instructor. This is going to be great. And he wrote back and he's like, yeah, you can come be a tire technician. And I was like, okay, that sounds interesting. Or
what does that involve?
He said, come interview to be a tire technician.
Now, what does that involve?
Well, to me,
I'm
thinking Le Mans tire technicians are like, tire engineers. And I'm like, okay, that's a kind of an interesting place to put me. So I went out and I interviewed with Bob and the shop manager. And the shop manager goes, okay, here's where you're going to work. And he takes me to the back, garage. And it's just, floor to ceiling tires. And he's like, you're going to be the guy changing all these tires.
I was going to say, you're just mounting them on wheels?
Yeah.
Wow.
And I was like, okay. And it's 110 degrees outside because we're in Phoenix, because Bondurant's in Phoenix. I was like, okay, I guess this is what I'm going to do. And I was like, well, maybe I'll just work my way up quickly and we'll get going. And
so you took the job?
Oh, I took the job. Yeah. And that was a culture shock for me to move out to Phoenix, and a temperature shock. And I worked harder there than I have ever, and since probably ever, worked in my life. I mean, I think I was and I was the only tire technician for the entire school.
No kidding.
So, that's a fleet of 350 cars. So I was doing, and not all of them are running at the same time, but I was probably doing 250 to 300 tires a day. So, from the moment I got there, now, granted, there were only 2 tire sizes and wheel sizes that I was changing, so you could leave the machine on the same settings and you could flip them very quickly.
Yep.
But physically, that was hard. And I was trying to do karting while I was there too, and they only have one kart track, or at the time, they only had one kart track in Phoenix. And it wasn't the same kind of karting culture there. In Southern California, you have a long history of karting, and there's lots of kart shops and kart tracks, and you can be seen and so on and so forth. There, you're kind of out in the sticks. So I was still karting, still trying to make the open wheel thing work, but you don't get paid anything as a tire technician. But I did work my way up piece by piece by piece until eventually I was teaching. But, I was never making enough to really pay for testing, which was the biggest thing. I wasn't getting enough seat time in cars. And that's a pretty big deal in racing. Like you mentioned, with soccer or ball sports, it's pretty easy to practice. You can just go to a park, and sometimes you don't even have to go to a park, and you can just learn and learn and learn and learn. But with motorsports, it requires a lot of money and a lot of time and
space.
Yeah. And I happened to work at a racing school, but there wasn't the level of access that you would think, you know?
Right.
And I wasn't driving the cars that I would be that I was racing. So I started, to segue back to my childhood. My father being a journalist, we always had computers in the house. My earliest memories, I still remember like these gigantic DOS machines, right? Because he was a writer, he was writing, he didn't use a typewriter, he used a computer. So I was playing with computers, since I was a wee little one.
IBM PC Junior.
Oh yeah.
I had one.
Like Capros and things like that didn't have hard drives, that had, big floppies that you had to, flip back and forth. And, to keep me interested, he would give me a game, and those games at first were just text-based games. And then eventually they were graphics-based games. And then I remember the first racing game that we got, I was just blown away. It was all black, or green and white, I should say, and then it was color and so on and so forth. But I remember, being there and doing that all the time, and it was just entertainment, right? By the time I got to Bondurant, those games became more and more accurate. And I remember the first time I played a game and I thought, whoa, that car did what I expected it to do. Like that is what it would do in real life. And it was playing a game called Viper Racing. It's really ancient now, and I had one of the first force feedback steering wheels, a Microsoft force feedback wheel. I think it was called Force Pro or something like that. And I was so impressed with it. I thought, wow, this is really good. I had the thing clamped to my desk, and I was like, well, okay, I was racing Pro Mazda at the time, which is a formula car, and you're in a very laid down position in that car. And I remember thinking, okay, this is cool. What if I took my pedals and steering wheels and put them in a laid down configuration, and I got like an old seat from one of the Formula Fords at work, and I just nailed together some 2x4s and put them kind of in the proper position, and then put the monitor right in front of the steering wheel. And I remember the first time I sat in that, I was like, whoa, that made a huge difference to my perception to this game, just being in the right seating position generally, right? And then I'd play a whole bunch, and I'd go, and I'd learn the tracks that I was going to go to if they had them in the game. Even though I was driving the wrong car, I was driving a Viper street car, but at least I could learn the track, right? And then I thought, okay, well, but the problem is these pedals are just little springy things on plastic. So I took them apart and I looked at them and I'm like, oh, I understand how this works. It's just a lever that's moving a potentiometer with a spring. And the reason why I knew how it worked is because the data system in my race car worked exactly the same way. The pedals hooked up to a potentiometer or an encoder. And instead of telling the car what to do, it's telling the data what you're doing, right? So I was like, oh, that makes sense to me. Okay, how can I make this pedal? The first thing I want to do is make the brake pedal stiffer, because just this little squishy thing wasn't doing it for me. And in a formula car, you're leg pressing as hard as possible.
So this was all mimicking the real life experience, but almost just by you're stumbling into these things.
Exactly.
Or you
I'm
never
totally
really
stumbling into it.
You never really had the plan, if you will, to say, I want to make a quote simulator out of this. No, I just want my game to feel more real.
Yeah, and when I achieved that next step and it did what I wanted it to do, I was like, this is fantastic. I could do it to the next thing. It just emboldened me, right? It's like, oh, well, I can do that. I just achieved this. Let me just move on. And I just did it in little tiny steps, piece by piece by piece.
Now, were there other companies already doing this that you were exposed to? Or
so at the time, there were only companies that were making bits and pieces, right? Like there's a company, there were companies that specialized in the steering wheels. And again, at the time, it was all gigantic companies just making consumer level entertainment things, right? There was nobody really taking it seriously.
Wasn't professional grade.
No, it was meant for gaming at home. So I had to professionalize their product or mount it in a certain way or so on and so forth. I had to keep modifying and modifying and modifying to get what I wanted.
Now, were you ever reaching out to the Microsofts of the world saying, this should be this way? Okay, got it.
No, who I was reaching out to was the chassis engineers, my race engineers. the fabricators at Bondurant, because for me it was, I just need to do this next little step and I don't know how to do that thing.
Yeah.
You know, like I had to ask my race engineer, you know, how the telemetry worked and, you know, figure out how potentiometers work and so on and so forth. And then for the fabricators at work, you know, when I took the step from 2x4s to, oh, I should make a metal frame. Well, now I have to weld it, you know. I probably shouldn't mention this, but I was like, you know, they would kindly let me use the welders and things at work, you know.
That's awesome.
After hours when no one was around. It's long enough now. I'm sure they don't work there anymore.
Right.
You know, but I would, you know, secretly use the, you know, tools and things like that. Never materials, obviously. But, you know, just to get what I needed, you know, because I couldn't do it any other way. I couldn't test as much as everybody else that I was racing against. You know, I couldn't, I didn't have the money to build huge, expensive things. So I eventually got this thing into a state where it was really good and no one had ever seen anything like that. And no one really saw it. And I started talking to my race engineers about it and they're like, wow, that, you know, the more they heard about it, they're like, that's pretty cool. And then, you know, one came over to my apartment and saw it and was like, wow, that's actually really cool.
So what year is this?
This would have been like 2002 or 3. And then it kind of just, then I got, then the whole Bondurant thing ended and I moved back to LA. I needed to kind of restart my life. And I thought I was going to reboot my life, you know. And I became a systems administrator at a visual effects company called Digital Domain, because a couple of my friends worked there, and it was a cool, fun .com kind of place to work.
Yep.
But I never really let the racing thing go. I kind of stepped back to karting. And as such, the simulator kept getting better and better and better. But a lot of my private coaching clients from Bondurant were still in touch, and I was still working with. And one of them saw the chassis, the racing sim that I built myself, and said, "Look, can you build me one of these?"
Oh wow!
And I was like, "Sure, of course I can, and I'll make it better."
And were they local to LA at that time?
They were local.
Cool. So you didn't have to like ship it or.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Right.
And then all of a sudden he goes, "Hey," and you know, he's a business owner and owns a very large company, and started it from scratch. And he's like, "Hey, I've got a friend who's a hockey player, a pro hockey player, who also wants one." I was like, "Oh, great. 2 is easier to build than 1 because I can just build them side by side, you know." And I built these 2. And, you know, delivered them and installed them for them. And they were over the moon about it. And the hockey player just thought it was the coolest thing ever.
Yeah.
But my friend who's the business owner said, you know, you should really think about starting a company to do this. This is something that no one else is doing. And you're doing at a level that no one will be able to catch up to you for a while.
Wow.
And he became my business mentor. Kind of coaching me along the way on how to spin things up small. And the first 5 or 6 chassis were built out of a shed in the back of a house that I built, you know, or the shed I built in the back of a house that I was renting. And I started up on, I think it was $23,000 in total.
Now, was he contributing to that?
No. The conversation never got there, you know. Instead, a friend of the family became an angel investor, and she brought another friend as well. And they owned an accounting firm, and that seemed like a good fit because they could take care of the accounting too. Yeah. Right. And this would be a continuing theme in my company: is like realize the things you don't know and make good hires for those positions,
right?
You know.
Yeah.
And we started by building 2 chassis, and they became our showroom chassis or demo chassis, and they lived at my house. And I took them. I mean, my dad kind of helped in a way that he introduced me to the people at the Peterson Museum, and we held a big event there.
Awesome.
You know, we entertained all their friends, and then I knew from my racing days, and also he knew as well some IndyCar teams as well, and I would drag these things out to the Long Beach Grand Prix and put them up in hospitality suites.
Sure.
You know?
Yeah.
And I mean,
like in a hotel, you mean?
No, hospitality suites at
like
Long Beach at
track
the track.
side.
Yeah, like the
yeah.
team or sponsors hospitality suites.
Yep. So were you in conjunction with any sponsors in order to make that happen?
Oh, yeah. I mean, the pitch was, hey, I will entertain your guests if you give me a spot to set up this racing simulator.
Smart.
And that was kind of the pitch with the Peterson Museum. It's like, we're going to have this big event for our private members who are all the, very wealthier racers, you know. I will entertain them with our simulators if you give me some space,
That's cool.
And we did this a lot at the beginning.
Now, do they have a simulator at the Peterson? I can't remember.
Now, yeah, they have like Forza little console things.
But it lives there?
Yeah, not ours.
But that's not yours?
No.
Yeah, okay.
So, yeah, we did that a lot, and we just kind of spread the word organically.
For sure, yeah.
And that really has become our thing, right? Is like, it's all word of mouth. I run into racers now, IndyCar racers now that I met, way back then in 2006, 2005, that were like, is this the thing I tried briefly at Long Beach? And you're like, yeah. And they're like, I didn't realize that's what became CXC, because now I know CXC from everything, and it's like, yeah, that was us.
That's incredible. I'd like to take a minute to thank you for listening to the Standard H podcast. It's certainly been a lot of fun sharing each guest's story, even during the craziest of times over the last year. The good news is it's allowed me to further focus on some of the elements that make Standard H possible. I've done a ton of product development, some items for well over a year. If you'd like to support the podcast, the least expensive way is to simply rate and review the show on whatever platform you're on. Further, you can visit standard-h.com, where you can purchase the brand's apparel or directly support the podcast under the accessories tab. I can't thank you guys enough for listening to the show and for all of your support, especially through social media. It's been so much fun interacting with you, and all of the great feedback has been wonderful, so thank you. So many of you are into watches, whether you are just starting to collect them or if you're already in deep in discussing the extensive finishing of the movements. In fact, my most listened to episodes have been watch-related. For those of you interested in independent watch companies, Passion Fine Jewelry in Solana Beach, California might just have what you're looking for. Previous listeners may be familiar with owner Tim Jackson from episode 1 of the Standard H podcast. He and his team are certainly a wealth of information while offering incredible customer service. Tim and his team are quite literally made up of family and friends, so I'm confident you'll feel very much a part of their community even if it's your first visit. Of course, if California is out of reach, definitely visit passionfinejewelry.com for more information, or visit Tim's blog Independent in Time for a deeper watch dive. Now let's get back to the show. So when did that kind of transition happen from, the hospitality suite to like a bona fide big business? You're targeting teams, or high net worth individuals, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think that there was no real tipping point, right? It just grew, as our customers, as we had 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 customers. I mean, I think in our first year we sold 1 simulator. Our second year we sold 3, and then it just kind of grew and grew and grew and grew. And it was a mix of like that word of mouth thing, but also we very early on knew that our customers would be all over the world and that wasn't going to cut it. So we built a really nice website and tried to make it as clean as possible, and try and explain this complex thing as easily as possible. And as simply as possible.
Can you do that right now?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very visual thing, right? I mean,
sure.
You can talk all you want, but as soon as you see one, then you get it, because it's all about how it's made, what it's made from, that it's not, an entertainment device. I mean, like, I mean, you can look at one right now and go, that's not really an entertainment device. You know, that is a for real training tool using all the parts from a real race car and so on, you know.
So for those listening, since this isn't a visual medium, so it's basically machined metal with a base.
Yeah.
With a race car, like with a race seat.
Yeah.
That's mounted on what looks like pneumatic devices.
Electromechanical, actually.
Okay.
Yeah. So linear actuators.
Okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, this goes to our core philosophy of it's function over form any day, because the majority of our customers are using them as a training tool, right? So, you know, it's first about how accurate it is, right? And that's all the haptic feedbacks or the physical feedback devices.
Right.
And there's more than just a motion system. That's the most visual one that everybody always picks out because you can see it, right? But it goes to vibratory control systems that are, you know, triggering things all over everything that you touch in the simulator, or independent vibratory devices, seatbelt tensioners that compress the seatbelts under braking, really high-end force feedback, you know, direct drive, very powerful, but also high fidelity force feedback steering systems. The brake pedal is a true hydraulic system. It has a master and a slave cylinder. And that's a passive haptic feedback device, right? To even other passive haptic feedback devices, like the fact that we use magnetic shift paddles that have a very specific feel, you know, and shape and size, and the steering wheels are a certain shape and size and feel, and the seat and the type of belts that we use. Basically anything that you have a physical interaction, no matter how small or how big, we are going to that degree to try and make sure that it is exactly like your type of racing.
And you develop all of this stuff here?
Yes, in-house.
So you do software, hardware,
delivery, installation, aftercare support,
right.
all of it.
So walk us through briefly what it's like developing this type of software, because it is a video game of sorts. You have a screen in front of you.
Sure.
Even though it's for professional training and such. What is the software development like?
So we should probably be more specific as the type of software we develop, right? So we don't develop the engines themselves, you know, the simulation engines. A lot of cases we're pulling off-the-shelf engines, like things that you've probably heard of, like iRacing or Assetto Corsa, things like that, right? Our software development really goes where those end, right? If it's a custom car or track or physics or user interface or what drives the physical parts of the simulators, how that software communicates with our hardware, the middleware that goes between there, to venue management control systems, to customer service tools, like the simulator is always monitoring its own health hardware and software wise and reporting home to tell us if something's going wrong or if something needs to be updated or whatever. We develop all of that part here.
And that communication back to home, if you will, is all through the cloud?
Yeah,
Got
exactly.
it.
Yeah.
Very cool.
And that's really born from like the type of customer that we have, right? We have what I like to say the three pillars, right? We have our professional or semi-professional training client, right? And then we have, and that's, like I said, the bulk of our customers. Then we have what we call the big boy toy market, right? And they really want what the pros are using, but they just want to use it a different way, right? They want to use it for entertainment. They want something that is just so cool and nobody has, and they want 4 of them lined up in their house, in their man cave.
And a
right?
place to set their beer.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Right. But they want the same level. So it's still the same product.
Yeah.
And then we have our commercial division, and our commercial division does like promotional simulators or location-based entertainment facilities.
Now, are those respectively the levels of business that you contribute towards? Like, are the big boy toys buying more than, say, the commercial?
For now, I see the trend of commercial entertainment facilities going to, traditional, back in the day, they were all just like arcade games, right? But then arcade games didn't become enough. Like the public wanted more, right? Something more elevated,
more real,
right? So they just kept leveling up and leveling up and leveling up until now they've reached our level of realism, right? And that market is growing exponentially. So we're seeing more and more and more of that.
So who do you consider to be your competition?
At our level, we're kind of lucky in the sense that we don't really have competition.
Is that right?
Yeah. I mean, the biggest problem we run into is that we have customers. This is a product that is not easily understood by someone who's not in this industry, right?
Makes sense.
So when I get a customer asking me to compare us to another simulator, what they're really asking us to do is compare our class of simulator to another class of simulator. And I always use the analogy of, okay, let's think of it this way. You are a person from the 1700s and you're looking at a picture of a Ford Focus, red on the internet. And then you're looking at a picture of a 488 Ferrari red on the internet. To you, that's the same car,
If you're from the 1700s.
If you're from the 1700s, right? Now, all of us know cars, especially car guys really know cars. So we go, oh, well, we know what the difference is, right? Yes, they're both cars. They both have four wheels. That car is way cheaper or I should say way more economical, right?
Right.
But it has nowhere near the performance level, the build quality, the aftercare support. I mean, everything else is on a totally different scale. That doesn't make the Ford Focus a bad car. It's just aimed at a different market. But you and I and most people these days know that inherently that those cars are totally different, right? With simulators, looking at pictures on the internet, that is not very easy to figure out.
I see.
So I end up having to have the class discussion, right? It's like, look, those are great simulators, but they're made from consumer level equipment. It's plastic steering wheels and, the if they have motion, they're kind of entertainment motion that's much cheaper to reproduce and so on and so forth. You're never going to get the level of quality of service and, they're not going to come install it for you and teach you everything that goes along with it. But it's also going to be a third the price, because that's what they're aiming for.
It is a get what you pay for kind of mentality.
Exactly.
Yeah. So how many employees are you up to now totally?
I think right now we're at like 28.
28 employees.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're still a very small company.
Yeah, sure. So the bulk of them are in customer service or development or...
Oh, no, they're spread all... Well, actually, I should say customer service is probably the largest department because customer service encompasses a lot of different subdivisions. Customer service can be remote support. It can be on-site support. It can be the install teams. It can be the rentals division.
So on-site support, how does that work when somebody's in Dubai driving one of these things?
It works exactly how you think it works.
So they're literally on a jet? They're
literally on a jet out. Yeah. Our install and remote support team and our rentals team are, on the road all the time.
Do you have different levels of support? Do you have like a subscription model where they will fly your person on their private jet?
Yeah. Yeah, kind of. Like we do have different levels of support depending on the type of client, commercial, home use or professional training use,
Yep.
And then, we are just onboarding now a set of subscription models after the standard warranty runs out. Right.
Now, what is the warranty?
For home use, it's a 2-year, bumper to bumper, hardware, software, doesn't matter, just anything. No questions asked, we like to call it.
That's great.
And for commercial, it's always been a subscription yearly. First year is included with the purchase.
Cool.
But now we're getting customers. And then so for customers who traditionally ran out of warranty, we just switched to time and materials. Look, we're still here for you 24/7, but we're just going to charge you hourly and for the materials. But a lot of customers have said, like, we love your support so much. we're not really using it because something's gone wrong. It's because we want, the simulator is capable of doing so many things, or I want to change cars and tracks or whatever. I just want to be handheld this whole time. I want to continue that service.
Wow. Yeah.
So,
well, you guys do hardware development here too.
Yep.
You were polite and gracious enough to show me the special projects room.
Yeah.
You've got 3D printers, laser cutters.
Yeah.
What limitations do you have here?
Oh, we have plenty of limitations, but as we get bigger, we can start to have tools and processes and staff that can specialize, right? And that's really the key. We do a lot of development, both for special projects, bespoke projects for customers, outside of our normal production stuff, but we also do a lot of product development as well, on a continuous basis, right? Technology moves so quickly, and we learn new things or we gain new capabilities that we always want to stay on the bleeding edge.
Well, how long have you been in this space? How many square feet is this?
This facility is 20,000 square feet.
Yeah, it's a proper airplane hangar for that.
We have another one as well that's 5,000 square feet.
So how long has the business been operating at this level?
We moved into those two split building scenario 2.5 years ago.
Okay.
And then before that, we had a 10,000 square foot single facility. And then before that, we had a 3,000 plus 2,500. We were already bursting out of that one.
And you've always just reinvested in the company, or have you needed to take on any investment since?
No, we've always just reinvested in the company.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So you're still on a growth trajectory, it seems.
Yeah, definitely.
And then commercials growing, I guess.
Yep.
What's the hardest part of your job? Like, what's the hardest part of running this thing?
The hardest part of my job is learning to be a bigger and bigger company and how that works.
Scaling.
Yeah, scaling is the biggest thing.
Is your accountant helping with that?
Yeah. Everybody's helping with that, right?
Right.
I mean, we had, 7 years ago, we had 4 employees, and, life was so much easier,
So you've
and
grown
less
4
customers.
times the size in the last 4 years.
Yeah. It's accelerating. The growth is accelerating.
So it's almost exponential.
Almost, yeah. I try not to use that word.
Right.
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't want to jinx you either.
Yeah.
But I'm just kind of thinking that that's insane.
Yeah, it is. It's and learning how to service our customers as that customer base grows so quickly, and maintaining that level of customer service. But also just from the employee standpoint, now we have an HR manager, and
right?
And now my HR manager is constantly checking me, and it's like, this is a weird experience,
What prompted that hire? Just the number of people now hired?
Yeah, the number of people now hired and the type of questions that employees start asking, right? And going, and it no longer can be just like a side conversation. Oh, yeah, do that this way. And, oh, now we have to write down policies. And, oh, now we're writing down a lot of policies,
I can leave this in or out. It's your choice. But do you offer full benefits and
we
all
do,
that stuff?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that sort of, matriculation process going from 4 employees to 28 with full-time benefits and stuff, is that part of the reason you hire an HR manager, I would imagine?
That's one of the reasons. You hire an HR manager for a lot of reasons.
Yeah, sure.
And
Liability.
all of them are really important. At first we tried to outsource it, but,
it wasn't cost effective.
It wasn't cost effective, and you weren't really getting that level of service that you get with a person who lives and breathes it here every day.
I was going to say, because then they're not down the hall either, I don't think.
Yeah, exactly.
You can't
and that's really what our employees want, is someone to go ask a silly question to. People think of HR as this thing where it's it's the, what happens when things go wrong. I'm learning now, and I thought that too. I'm learning now that HR is really about clarifying things ahead of time so that everybody feels comfortable, going, oh, that's how things work. There's no ambiguity
Yeah, for sure.
there. Yeah.
How important is corporate culture to you?
It's really important. I mean, we're still a small company, and I always want to feel like that. It's very important, especially in what we do, because what we all do here is really what we love, right? And that has to extend to not only the things that you're working on, but the people that you work with and the way the company is operated.
What are some things that are specific to CXC that are culture related?
Well, being small is that I get to personally be connected to every single employee, and kind of share direction and concepts. That is really kind of cool to be able to still do.
And I'm sure the employees love that as well.
I hope they do.
Because
Yeah.
I'm sure that symbiosis, that
totally.
sort of mutually beneficial, that you can touch everything, but then they have access to you as well.
Exactly.
I
Yeah.
think that's what's wonderful about a small company, really.
And not only that, but the projects we get to work on, I mean, we're all builders of some sort here, right? We're all creators of some sort. And the projects we get to work on, we have our production product that we continuously develop, which is fantastic. That keeps things new and fresh and exciting to work on. But then with special projects and the clientele and the projects that go through there are always exciting and new. And for a creator to always be working on something new and exciting, that's fantastic, and to have a direct connection to that exact client and what they want and how they like it and how they use it and all that sort of stuff. I think that's really important as well.
From a product standpoint, like you've told me prior to recording that like everything is so dialed with these machines, everything down to like, the pedal pressure that actually you did mention earlier about like your first iteration of one of these. It's so real. Like, what keeps you motivated? Because pedal pressure is one thing, right? Like early days, that's like a phenomenal attribute about one of these things.
Yeah.
But now that all that's been done, like what motivates you? Like, how do these machines, how can they get better? Is it like graphics cards? Is it like how do you advance
I mean, you got to
this?
remember as someone who builds these, and I'm sure everyone else has this too, and someone who races, which most of us do here, there's a list of 1,000 things that our simulator can't do in our heads.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
What's one that's like your pet peeve?
Oh, man, picking one out is really hard. But I mean, I would love to do like sustained G-forces, and and even from the usability standpoint, right? I mean, in the end, these are incredibly complex ecosystems that are these simulators, right?
Yeah.
But yet our clients want them to be as easy to use as an iPhone, So just that dance of getting this really accurate, highly complex thing to be as easy to use from the user perspective as an iPhone is really complicated, and requires a lot of engineering on the hardware and on the software side, So it's not just the realism side, but it's the ownership, usability side. That's, really, really important too.
Sure.
So, I mean, there's so many things even in that department that I'm like, how do we automate this or make this so that the customer never has to think about it, or, all of those things. It's a never ending kind of list of things, and then once you solve that one thing, you can discover a new thing, and it just constantly goes forever, which is, and it's so funny for, because I tell this to customers all the time. It doesn't do everything, but then they get out of the simulator and they're like, I can't imagine where else you can go with this. It's like, yeah, but you're not the creator of it. It's like the painter who looks at their painting and goes, I see all the mistakes and all the things I could do on the next one, next to the people who are just admiring the painting going, this is perfect. How do you make this any better?
Right. No, that's a really great analogy. So do you battle any licensing issues, be it car design, or like, how does that work? Like, how do you have the access to you swiped through this wall-mounted menu, basically, of thousands of cars.
Yeah.
What's the legality behind using all those?
Well, so that comes back to we are using off-the-shelf engines.
I see.
That come with their own licensing built in for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of cars, right? And then when we are asked to create a car for a customer, it's a one-time use thing. Sometimes, a lot of the times, it's for the car manufacturer, right? Or their racing team or whatever. Mm-hmm. And if it's for a race car driver, you know, it doesn't have to say BMW or Ferrari on it as long as it behaves like their race car. What do they care?
Right.
You know, so we can create white label stuff on an individual basis all the time because the customer doesn't care. And, you know, the licensor is not going to care either.
Cool. Well, back to the machines just real quick, because I failed to ask you earlier. What are the quote-unquote trim levels of each? Like, what do you get for what?
So for our Motion Pro 2, our production line product, they all start from a common core system, right? So, and we call it the base model, right?
Sure.
And that base model is completely turnkey, ready to run. All you need to provide is space, power, and internet, right, as a customer. It comes with hardware, software, installation, training, aftercare support, everything you need, right? And that trim level is a single screen, full motion, same pedals, same steering wheel, same everything. But it's single screen. And then from there, you can obviously add different types of screens. You can add VR.
What does the base model cost?
The base model is $57,000.
Okay. Turnkey. And then level 2 takes you to what?
So there is no level from that point on.
Okay.
From that point on, it's options that you can add a la carte.
I see.
On our website, we do have some 3 pre-configured systems, and that's for people who are like, I don't want to think about individual options. I just want the all-in or kind of the middle of the road or the base model. You know?
Right.
But really, you can achieve that with any. You know, we have a configuration tool on our website that walks you through step by step. You can achieve any of those configurations.
So it's like speccing your 911 online.
Exactly.
Cool.
Exactly. So from there, you're just choosing options like display options, different sizes, VR, body work for those who are really into the like looks of it. We have full carbon fiber body kits and stitch suede covers and all that sort of stuff. We have control options as well. We use quick disconnect steering wheels, and a steering wheel feel is a big thing, like shape, size, type of electronics, different types of shift paddles and buttons and so on and so forth. So we have a whole range of different types of steering wheels. This sim comes standard with what we call our GT steering wheel, which is the round steering wheel, what you would find typically in a GT race car, right?
Right.
A carbon fiber shift paddles, buttons and knobs and so on.
So these are different options you can get for your simulator.
Exactly.
So, for example, what is the upcharge from circular to more of that F1 shape?
So that's our Formula wheel. It has a totally different electronics package and steering wheel, obviously. It also adds clutch paddles, like a Formula 1 car.
Right.
And that, I believe, is $2,300 add-on. And they are quick disconnect, so you still have the GT wheel. You just swap back and forth now, depending on the type of car you're driving.
So when you upgrade, you're actually just getting another steering wheel.
You're just adding on.
It's not in lieu of.
Exactly.
I see.
In that
Very
case,
cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
And then, we have stock car wheels and vintage wheels and kart wheels, you name it, and then customers a lot of times have us build bespoke steering wheels that are exactly the same parts in their race car or even street car. I've had someone bring me their P1 steering wheel.
No way. So I was going to say, how does that work? They bring the wheel in.
They typically bring the wheel in, or we work with the manufacturer directly. In that case, we worked with McLaren directly. The CEO of McLaren is a customer of ours, so he has multiple simulators.
That's helpful.
And we worked with Ferrari, and we've worked with all of them now. But yeah, they bring us the steering wheel. With a street car steering wheel, it's actually more complex because they have an airbag in the middle. So we have to kind of de-airbag the simulator, or the steering wheel rather, without destroying that front face. And typically that front face is actually integrated into the airbag system.
So how often does the CEO of McLaren or the representative from Ferrari come with new requests on like what should or shouldn't be in the simulator?
From a hardware perspective?
Anything. Like, do they offer that kind of feedback?
They do. Yeah, McLaren especially, we worked quite a bit with. And ironically, having nothing to do with our relationship with the CEO. It was completely independent and he wasn't even aware.
So the company reached out.
Oh, yeah.
What kinds of feedback are they giving you?
We get all kinds of things, right? So typically it's either customer driven. I have this very, very special customer that I need to really, really take care of.
I see.
On either the motorsports or just like the person who owns all the entire line, you know?
Yep.
Or it can be from the racing division side that's like, I really need this for whatever reason. It can be from the promotional side. We want to use your simulators to promote our product in some way. Or it's worked from the other side where they've quite often OEMs, very high-end OEMs have come to us and said, we would like you to develop a white label simulator for us that we can sell under our brand.
Oh, interesting.
Not to normal customers, but to only our super, super elite customers.
That sounds like something Koenigsegg would do.
Yeah. Well, they all do it, honestly.
Oh, is that right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Cool. You drive what looks like a Mark VI Golf R.
I do, yeah.
How's that?
I love it.
I think it's the biggest bang for your buck.
I 100% agree.
I'm a little biased because we have carbon steel gray.
Yeah.
We have the same color.
Oh, wow.
And they're parked next to each other outside.
Really? Oh,
yeah.
Wow.
Mine's not an R.
Oh, okay.
I have a Mark 7.
Oh, cool.
And it's had some work done to it.
Oh, very cool.
So it's more fun than stock.
Yeah, I love that car for so many reasons.
Have you always been a Volkswagen guy?
I haven't. I'm kind of brand agnostic, you know. I learned how to drive a stick in a 1968 Mini Cooper S.
Oh, that's funny.
That my dad bought brand new. You know?
I learned on an 84 5 Series BMW.
Oh, cool. Yeah, there you go. So
stiff clutch pedal back then.
Yeah, the Mini especially. The Cooper S Mini has like a very stiff. I now own that car. He passed it on to me.
No kidding.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
So it's still a one family car. You know.
The handling on those things is just insane.
Unbelievable. So, I mean, I've always been into pointy cars, you know, the ones that feel very direct. But I'm also kind of practical in that sense that, like, I have race cars. I drive race cars. I don't need my street car to be a race car.
That's so common amongst race car drivers.
Yeah.
They don't care.
Because we do it elsewhere and do it much better.
Right.
Because, a race car is a purpose-built thing. It is only good on a racetrack and in the right conditions and so on and so forth, right? To me, trying to change my street car into a race car only makes it worse for the street, you know?
Yeah. You know, it is kind of funny because you consider like a McLaren P1 or something, and you look at the roads in Los Angeles, and if you're driving down Sunset, you're going to need a front splitter probably within a week.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And it's just the little things, right? Like, I mean, the reasons I love my Golf R is it's pointy when I want it to be. It has a little bit of power. It's a manual, which I love.
Of course.
And, you know, the suspension is stiff without being jarring.
Right.
And it's quick without being hard to drive, you know, like power wise. Like the power band is really easy to modulate. I can cruise if I want to cruise, and if I put my foot in it, it goes okay.
I haven't driven your car, but third gear in my car is the best. I mean, it goes from 24 miles an hour to 80.
Yeah.
Like, it's such a long gear.
Yep.
But it gets you everywhere.
Yeah, totally. And I love the way it looks. It's understated, but yet pretty elegant for a hatch, right?
Sure.
And it's a hatchback. So I am constantly going to like Home Depot and throwing a bunch of stuff in the back of it, and it's no big deal. And I have two boys. You know, when my youngest started kid carts, I could fit the kid cart in the back of that car and go karting with that car.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, it's great. Do you have a favorite car of all time?
No, I have many favorites, and my boys ask me that all the time. What's your favorite car? I'm like, I don't really have
what
one.
are your top three?
I'm really into. I love McLarens. A couple of the McLarens I like. I love the 650s, especially the LTs.
The LT, sure.
Yeah. 720 is okay. I think it's too much.
I love that car, but I love the 650 too. To be fair.
I even like the fives quite a bit as well. I think bang for buck, they're pretty good. I like some vintage Porsches a little bit, not to the level that some people have taken it.
Right.
I love my Mini Cooper. The original Minis were just the ultimate pocket rockets.
They're so cool.
Yeah.
What color is yours?
Blue and white.
Oh, great. White roof?
White roof, yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah, and my boys love it as well. They love whipping around the canyons and that.
It's like a real life toy.
It is. It
I mean,
totally is.
It's totally the adult toy.
And of course, everyone who sees you smiles. My dad called it the smile car because it makes everyone smile.
That's awesome.
You know?
So
Whether
good.
you know what it is or not, it's so crazy looking.
Now, do you drive that fairly frequently?
I do now, yeah.
Now, what's service and maintenance like on that?
I do it all myself. Well, not all myself. Some of the heavy duty stuff I take to like a mini, specialist,
yeah.
The guy,
Right.
Some
Everybody's
old
got a guy
in the back of
Yeah.
yeah.
That's cool. Well, what's next for you? What's next for CXC?
We're like I was telling you earlier, we're in a pretty big development cycle right now. Although we seem to be perpetually in one.
Yeah.
But right now we're making a really, really big push for like a generational change, which is a long cycle. I think that all three of our markets, all three of our pillars are growing rapidly. They are, you got the home entertainment guys, which are really starting to take off. Now, instead of buying one, they're buying 2 or 3 or 4
really?
For their buddies to race. Well, yeah, because what's the best thing to do in racing? You don't always want to race against the computer.
Right.
You want to race against your friends.
And they're putting 4 of these things in their house.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah.
But
then, the motorsports side is growing equally, right? You have everyone from like the bottom, tier spec Miata racer might be in our certified pre-owned category price level, right? All the way up to, people who are racing at Le Mans and such.
That's right. You mentioned the certified pre-owned. Usually that's an expression you hear when talking about a car dealership.
Mm-hmm.
So walk us through that. So people are flipping these things around, or they're just upgrading, or like what causes somebody to get rid of
there's
one
a
of these
whole
things?
host of reasons. I mean, I get reasons mostly in I'm moving to a new location where I can't take it.
Got it.
Like I'm moving to Singapore, which has to have a tiny little apartment, or
Right.
I don't really want to put the simulator in my apartment. My father owned this and he passed away, and I don't really care about it, so I want to move it on.
Now, do you have to do any treatment, upgrade?
Oh yeah,
Stuff like that?
So
Okay.
that's the certified pre-owned system is we send a technician out to completely tear it down and do a really detailed inspection and catalog everything. If it needs repair, it gets repair. If we think it needs upgrade before selling, then we'll upgrade.
Or like recovering the seat or something like that.
Yeah, it's mostly electric stuff, like our core systems, which include our PCs. They move very quickly and the software moves with it, right? So, an 8-year-old, 6-year-old system could probably benefit from a new core system.
Back to your iPhone analogy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The hardware typically doesn't really have issues, and even the seats, I mean, they last forever. Or a new VR type system or new screens or whatever really kind of makes it more relevant to today, as far as upgrades go. And then, we do all the listing, we do all the sales, we do all the pickup and new installation for the new customer. It's basically starting the new simulator sales process all over again. And then they also come with a limited warranty as well. So, even our certified pre-owned systems, they can start at 25,000, which is a lot cheaper than a new simulator.
Yeah, it's half. Yeah.
But it's still a significant investment, right? And you want to know that investment, if you're going to spend $25,000 on a simulator, you want to know that it's going to be at a level really that you're comfortable knowing that technology is going to be good. This is a good investment. It's going to last me a while. I'm going to be covered by the company who manufactured this. In fact, they're going to be doing all the installation and training. They always have my back.
That's great. Knowing that it is somewhat of a high cost item, right? Mm-hmm. Do you offer financing, or is that not an option?
We almost never get asked for finance. In fact, it's only our commercial customers that ask us for financing, and it's usually because it's a business reason of some sort, you know.
Right.
And we do offer commercial financing. We have a partner that does commercial financing, but it's kind of been a non-issue on the home and professional training side. So
that's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, you're a fan of the 917, it seems.
Yes.
It's specific to the Gulf livery.
Yeah. Yeah. In fact, our other facility has a gigantic wall of it.
What is it you love about the 917?
Well, I mean, I think of late recently, my father has just been telling me everything there is to know about Le Mans and the history of Le Mans. So, I'm kind of immersed in that right now because of the book he's written and writing.
Yep.
And I have friends who race for Porsche. One of our development drivers here is Patrick Long.
Oh, sure.
So, and he's an old friend. I mean, we grew up karting together. So,
oh, that's awesome. Now he's in Orange County, right? Newport.
He is, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Do you live close by?
I do, yeah.
Oh, cool.
I live in Rancho Palos Verdes.
Oh, sure.
And I moved there because it's the most like where I used to live in Beverly Glen.
Even, I guess, from a topographical standpoint.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's super laid back, and
I've got a really good friend that lives up there.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yep.
And I wanted that for my kids, They ride their dirt bikes around and no one cares.
That's awesome. Very cool. Chris, I really appreciate you taking the time. This has been super fun.
Thank you.
Where can people go to check more out?
Yeah. So, I mean, our website is cxcsimulations.com. Our Facebook is CXC Simulations, and Instagram, same. And YouTube as well, if you want to see a lot of videos.
Yeah, I encourage people to go to YouTube for sure.
Yeah.
The graphics are so realistic, just like, borderline any game these days.
Yeah.
But it's really, really impressive stuff, and I can't wait to check one out.
Cool. Sounds good.
All right, Chris, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Okay. Again, just a friendly reminder and request, however, if you could go online and just rate and review this podcast, I would greatly appreciate it. Huge thanks goes out to Chris one more time for taking the time to be a guest on the podcast. As always, thanks to Super Beautiful and Jensen Reed for the theme track, and as well as to Clear Audio for the noise cancellation headphones. And I will catch you guys in another 2 weeks. Have a good one.